Dad, let's start with what you know of your relatives, your grandparents. You're fourth generation in Chicago, and I'm just wondering what you know or heard about the earlier generations of your family, going back to your grandparents.
I know very little beyond my grandparents. My father's father was Morris, and I would say he was a very middle class guy. He had a garage for a while on the near north side, and he had a bar at one time. I don't know how long these things existed. I don't have any feel for timing. But he died early. I think it was 1934. I was 4 or 5 years old. His wife, Sadie, was my grandmother for a long time, and she was the quintessential grandmother. She would play with me endlessly, bake cakes. I would lick the frosting out of the pot. I have nothing but wonderful, wonderful memories of her. My other grandfather, my mother's father, was Aaron. He came over from Russia. Incidentally, both my father's parents were born here in this country. Aaron came over from Russia, my guess is in the 1890s. He was a peddler, and he located in Kewanee, Illinois. He had he had 4 children. After, I don't know how many years, the peddler opened a store, department store on North Avenue, and after a number of years, I would guess sometime in the early 30s or late 20s, they opened a store on Devon Avenue. We lived near that store. We lived 3 or 4 blocks away. During the 30s, part of the time, my mother managed the store. In the 30s, if you had a job, it was wonderful. Everybody was poor, but nobody knew it, because everybody was the same. And I worked in the store from the time I was probably 12 or 13. I would help the porter and bring out boxes and hang up clothes or do whatever. And as I grew older, I had other jobs. But I would spend all my unoccupied time, non-school time, working. 75 cents an hour, and that was a good deal. This grandfather, Aaron, he had it was either a stroke or a heart attack. And I have not much memory of him, except that we would go over there every Sunday, I believe. They lived in the Patrician Apartments on Fullerton, right near Lincoln Park. And my cousins would all go there, and their families. And we would sometimes we would go to the park, or we would play various games. But it was sort of a family thing. He would sit quietly, and I think he died in 1939 when I was 10 years old. His wife she spoke English not well. She was kind of into herself. I have very little memory of her. Whenever I would go over, she would give me money. That was the sort of the standard. They would always give the family, the kids in the family, give them some money or something. But every Sunday we would visit their apartment.
When you say patrician apartments, what do you mean by that?
That's the name. That was the name of the.
Oh, that's the actual.
Yeah, at that time, this was a very nice, a relatively nice apartment. He owned 2 stores. My uncle, I guess, really ran them from the early 30s when he had his stroke or heart attack. And he was relatively well off. But he was totally incapacitated, you know.
Your grandmother's name was what?
Esther.
Esther, okay.
So, I don't know what more I can tell you about my grandparents. You want to know about my parents? My mother was Irene.
How old were you when your grandparents died? You mentioned you were 10 when your grandfather died.
When he died, yeah. And I was 5 when the other grandfather died, about 5.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's mother, I don't remember. You've got the sheet there, Ruth. What were the dates? I think it was like in the 70s that the women died. Oh no.
Probably the 50s.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it was in the 50s, but it just seemed like the 70s. You know, as you get older, your time sort of distorts. But they died, one in 57 and one in 58.
Okay. I'm just wondering if you remember the experiences or remember.
Yeah, I
the
remember.
situation.
I remember the experiences. I remember when they died. I remember the funerals. Because by that time, I was 30 years old.
Were there any other, aunts or uncles or anything that were, had a, kind of a,
Yes.
part of your, part of your life back then, type of thing?
Well, we all went to Sunday school at Anshe Emmett every Sunday, and my sister and I were the 2 youngest. There were 3 sets of grandchildren: the Garbers, the Kellners, and the Abrahams. And they would take turns driving us to Sunday school. And I remember that very well. And I was bar mitzvahed, went to Hebrew school, graduated from Hebrew school. And I had, I guess, what most people would consider a pretty good Jewish education. There were 2 children from each family: Charlotte and Alan Garber. And Alan later ran the store after his father until they closed it. Howard and Shirley Kellner, their father, Max, managed the North Avenue store. And as I said, my mother managed the Devon store. It would seem to me a certain period of time, but the actuality of it was that it probably wasn't anywhere near that. But as a child, you look at time differently than you do as an adult. Things were kind of rough in the 30s. As a matter of fact, the Kellners lived with us in an apartment for, I don't know, a year or 2 maybe, right next to near the grammar school. And
what was the name of the grammar school? Do you remember?
Clinton.
Clinton?